Hello and welcome to the Lawrence County Animal Hour. I'm Beth Keaton with Friends of Lawrence County Animals.
I'm Ginger Morgan with the Lawrence County-Lawrenceburg Animal Shelter.
And we also have today our special guest, our district attorney, Brent Cooper. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we also have, our special guest, Miss Carol, is always the dog. But since you brought the dog, we'll introduce Miss Carol Wright. She's one of our wonderful volunteers, and she is helping us take care of Ziggy today.
Ziggy. And Ziggy, come here, buddy. No, okay.
We want to make sure that Ziggy can be seen by everyone.
I don't know. I think he can be seen. So Ziggy is about a year and a half. Since we had the DA on here, we thought we might talk about I would bring a dog that we had on a cruelty case. He was just surrendered to us. A little malnourished, but otherwise pretty healthy. He has a really gentle demeanor. We think he's part boxer and part, I'm not sure, cute dog. But he loves to be close to you. As you can tell, he's kind of snuggled up to Carol as close as he can get to her. And he likes playing with his buddies out at the shelter. So he has a buddy named Ralph that he likes really well. He likes to chase balls. He walks pretty well on the leash, doesn't he? They send me all kinds of stuff. He likes kids. He likes elderly people. He's a little shy at first. Was he shy with you when you
first?
Pick him up?
Yes.
And but he kind of warms up to you. And of course, when I come here, if they are shy, they all kind of come to me anyway. So, but he is up for adoption. So if you're looking for a boxer mix who can get along with other dogs, and he likes to, I think, get in the lake too, or the pond out at the. Well, actually, we don't have a pond at the shelter. We have big water bowls, and I think he gets into those. But he does like water, so he could be a water dog, too. If you want to adopt him, you can call 931-244-0265. Come here, Ziggy.
And he's trying to leave the show.
I know you should not exit stage, whatever, right or left. I'm not sure what stage that is.
So many people are scared of boxers, they're scared of bulldogs, and I realize any dog can turn and be aggressive if you're mean to him, especially. But he's very calm.
He is really calm.
And that's good to know that he gets along well with other dogs too.
Yeah, that's most people in Lawrence County who are looking for a dog already have a dog. There are very few that don't have a dog unless their dog of many years has passed or something.
Right. Right.
So, we try to test the dogs out there to see whether or not they get along with other dogs. And we do have a kind of a resident cat out at the shelter. He kind of decided he was ours. If you don't close your car door fast enough, he's going to get in with you. And I don't think Ziggy has paid him any attention. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't pay a cat attention if it got in his face about something. But at this point, he's walked by it and never,
if I was a cat at the shelter, I'd be getting in somebody's car too. With that many dogs.
I wouldn't be a cat at the shelter.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us some numbers about, I think you were bringing some numbers from the shelter maybe for the last quarter?
Yeah, so far this year, we have had 86 intakes. But that's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a whole lot. They come in.
That's really the total capacity of the shelter.
It is, actually. It's a little over the capacity of the shelter. We have returned 17 of those to the original owners. We have transferred out 40 so far, and we're hoping to transfer some more out here in just a couple of weeks. And we have spayed or neutered to 25 already.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, and we have a ton of dogs at the shelter. And speaking of transferring out, we transferred several dogs out at the end of February. And many of those dogs are they're in foster homes now, where I get videos and pictures of them all the time, where they're having fun in a normal environment. And then we just heard today that a lot of them have already been adopted. So, and these are the ones that have been sitting here in our shelter for a while. And it's not because we're not trying to get them adopted. It's just that everybody has dogs.
Everybody has a dog.
It's really important to spay and neuter.
Absolutely. And so, Brent, why don't you tell us about your dog? I know you've got a dog or two.
Well, I have 4 actually.
Or they'll say Brent, he doesn't need a dog either.
That's right. We had 5 until recently, and our old man Malik passed away on us. But we had Malik and his sister. They're both an interesting mix. They're half Basset Hound, half Black Lab. So
It's an interesting
yeah,
one.
Malik, he looks like a giant Black Lab with ears almost down to the ground. I mean, and Rose, his sister, she looks more of a just kind of a run of the mill mud, I guess. She's a sweet dog. And then of course we have a Yorkie, a Dachshund, and what's the other one we have? Oh, our lab, Cooper.
Your
I
lab,
can't believe I
Cooper.
wasn't thinking about Cooper.
You
our
forgot
lab.
about Cooper.
Yeah, he's 2 years old. He's really hitting his prime. We need to talk about this neutering thing. He definitely needs that.
If he's 2 year old, yes, we definitely need to get him on the list.
Absolutely, we do.
We can set you up with that.
Well, good, because he won't like it, but he needs it.
Oh, he'll be fine. When he wakes up, he'll be fine.
Yeah, those are our dogs. They're all great. And of course we have a few chickens too, and
You're a
some
country
beans.
guy, right? Out in the country.
Yeah.
Are you in the northern part?
Yeah, I
of-
live in Summertown,
Area?
off the
Okay.
turnpike out there.
Okay.
We don't have a big farm. We have 5 acres, enough that you can wander around on and let your chickens free range a little bit.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, we like it out there.
Well, good deal. Good deal. Well, why don't we get into the meat of the subject, I guess, and let's talk about some laws in Tennessee.
Okay.
What can you share with us about what are the laws in Tennessee when it comes to animals, domesticated animals? Let's start with dogs and cats. Are there spay neuter laws?
There aren't any criminal laws about spay and neutering. Now there are, of course, the law that everybody thinks about is the animal cruelty statute. Those are the cases that we probably see the most of, or almost the most of, and those are, I guess, your typical case is a dog that's not being fed, that's tied up. The average case we'll see would be a neighbor sees that a dog's been tied in a yard, tied to a tree with no food or water. It's been storming, raining, and the dog isn't being taken care of. We see everything from that case all the way to the worst of the worst, where you just have a house that's completely full of animals and feces, and the animals aren't being cared for, and there's even dead animals and dying animals, and they're at all stages of neglect and abuse in between, and we see everything on the spectrum in between those, to just a dog that the neighbors are worried about not being fed or watered, all the way to dogs or animals that are honestly being, tortured.
Now, your
basically.
district is how many counties?
It's 4 counties. It's the 22nd Judicial District, and it's Murray, Lawrence, Wayne, and Giles counties.
So, can you talk specifically about Lawrence County? Not that we don't care about our neighboring counties, because we do, and there are no gates
Sure.
at the county lines, so
That's
we
right.
know it crosses over. But when it comes to cruelty cases in Lawrence County, do you see several?
We do. I wouldn't say it's any more than other counties, per capita or anything, but
Okay.
but we do see our fair share here in Lawrence County, and like I said, they run the gamut from just a dog or cat, that's not being cared for, to animals that are actually being physically abused or tortured or killed, things like that.
So, what are some of the penalties? Let's say somebody gets convicted of animal abuse, and I guess you could say somebody didn't have shade or something, and on to some of the worst ones that you've seen. How can people be deterred from doing these things?
Well, the cruelty or abuse laws, they're a Class A misdemeanor, which is the same. It's the same level crime as simple assault, shoplifting, simple possession of drugs. It carries a sentence of up to 11 months and 29 days in jail. Under our law, if the penalty is less than a year in jail, then it's a misdemeanor. If it's a year or more, it's a felony.
Okay.
So that's the distinguishing line between misdemeanors and felonies. So in our typical cases, animal abuse cases, you're talking about most of the time they're not going to have a prior record. If it's not really intentional abuse, where somebody's just being cruel and mean to animals, kind of a negligent situation, you're usually talking about everything from probation to even sometimes what we call a retirement. That's an agreement by everyone to kind of put the case on hold and give the animal owner a chance to correct the situation. If it's something that's not serious and it's maybe just a neglect situation where they, sometimes people just fall on hard times and they can't take care of the animals the way they want to. Sometimes we've had cases where, the owner gets sick and goes in the hospital, and there isn't a support family around, and and then the neighbors notice the animals. So cases like that, we may do a retirement where we just kind of put the case on hold, give the owner to correct things and satisfy the court and everybody that they are going to take proper care of the animal from now on, and then we can dismiss it after that. Of course, if they're placed on probation, then that means that they have a sentence hanging over their head and there are conditions. So, again, it carries up to 11 months and 29 days as a sentence. So, if somebody was to plead guilty, typically you'd put them on probation for 11 months and 29 days with various conditions of probation. And if those conditions are met, then they end up serving out their probation time and they don't go to jail. If they violate those conditions of probation, then they're subject to going to jail up to that 11 months and 29 days.
And what type of condition, Brant? Like an example of what condition would go along with that?
Well, in a lot of cases, a condition will be that they not own any animals while they're on probation.
During that time.
There are, the judge, we can also ban someone from owning animals for permanently. And once the probation expires, it's not a probation violation if they do, but it would be contempt of court if they were found to have animals. But typically in those situations, you would make sure that, we've had puppy mill cases and things like that where they just have way too many animals, even hoarding cases. And in those cases, we would say, you're not allowed to own any animals for X amount of time. And the other thing to consider is if it's a puppy mill situation or a hoarding situation, then you're looking at a count for each animal. So those misdemeanors can be stacked. They can add up. So if someone had 10 dogs that they were neglecting or abusing, then they could get up to a 10-year sentence for those crimes. And again, all kinds of conditions can be placed on that. Everything from not owning animals to counseling, therapy, Of course, reporting no drugs, alcohol, things like that. It's kind of dependent on the case. You try to look at what's causing this person to do this, and you've shaped those conditions toward whatever the cause is. So
Okay.
it can, if you have if you have a prior conviction for animal cruelty, then your next charge, the next one is a felony, which is a Class E felony. So, which carries 1 to 2 years as a sentence. So it can become a felony.
In, I guess, our county, has anybody gone to jail for animal cruelty?
I'm trying to think of specific cases. I'm sure people have, and that's another thing we look at. We don't just automatically give probation on animal cases if it's a particularly bad case, or if they have a prior record, then jail time may be called for, and sometimes it may be served 30 days in jail and then X amount of time on probation. After the fact. So, yeah, I'm sure I didn't do any looking, but I'm sure.
For me, I want them all to go to jail.
Sure, yeah, and I know, and I have, obviously I love animals, and these cases I take very seriously, but a lot of my staff are the same way. I have assistant DAs in my office that foster animals and things like that. So. These are cases that we take seriously, but we also have to, just like as with any other crime, we try to make the punishment meet the circumstances. Our jail here has 300 beds. We have to try to make sure we have the right people in those beds, and also you kind of figure out what your judge is going to do on a particular case, and that also determines how we handle it. The DA can only be as tough as the judge is, because in Tennessee, judges are the sentencers when it comes to crime. So if
and they can only sentence according to what the law allows.
Right. Yeah, they're
right.
The law. If it's one count of animal cruelty, it's a Class A misdemeanor. The maximum that judge could give that person would be 11 months and 29 days. They couldn't give them 5 years, if the sentence is only 11 months and 29 days. So, yeah.
Do you see a connection between animal neglect or abuse and other crimes?
It's, and a lot of this isn't, I haven't done any scientific studies or anything, but in 25 years of being a prosecutor, you do, and it's kind of unique. In Murray County, we have problems with criminal gangs. We have, the gangs that you hear about, the Bloods and the Crips, and those gang members, for some reason, part of their culture are pit bulls, and part of that culture is them fighting those dogs sometimes. So, that's one way we see it tied in. Other ways is with your serious, drug addicts, drug abusers. When they're strung out on drugs, they're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of their kids, and they're not taking care of their animals.
Right.
Everybody gets neglected in those houses.
Somewhere I read, and it's been several years ago, so it might have changed by now, but I had read that every convicted serial killer had started out abusing dogs. Now, not everybody who abuses a dog turns out to be a serial killer, but for the ones that had been convicted, they had all started out with abusing animals, not just dogs. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
That is a major warning sign of not just serial killers, but of sociopathic behavior. And all of your serial killers are going to be sociopaths, which means they lack empathy or sympathy for anyone other than themselves. And we've had cases where we do mental evaluations on people, and when we see that in their history, that when they were a child, and you're right, it's not just dogs. It can be anything from birds to squirrels to any kind of animal that they have access to, and it's usually not just. In those cases, it's not neglect. It's they physically abuse and kill those animals and torture them. Sometimes that's a major warning sign of a sociopath or someone with that
I can't
disorder.
imagine. I just
No,
can't.
me either.
No.
My mind can't hardly go there.
Well,
As far as the wording, cruelty, abuse, neglect, aggravated cruelty, is that different? Are those words,
well,
are they pretty much the same?
well, it's the crime of animal cruelty covers, or it can be committed by any of those ways. In other words, there's really three ways you can commit animal cruelty. One is that you physically harm an animal by torturing it, maiming it. If you're shooting your dog with a pellet gun, that's one way you can abuse a dog, or that animal cruelty. Another way is by not providing food and water for them. So that's neglect. Sometimes that's intentional, sometimes it's not. And then the third way is by not providing adequate shelter for them. So if you're actively hurting the animal, that's cruelty. If you're neglecting the animal by not feeding it or providing water, that's also cruelty. And if you don't provide shelter for it, if you have a dog tied to a tree in 20-degree weather with nowhere to sleep out of the weather, that can be animal cruelty too.
Okay.
And then what makes it aggravated is really the level of harm that's done to the dog. If the dog if the neglect or the cruelty kills the animal or causes serious bodily injury to the animal, in other words, nearly kills it, then that's what elevates it to aggravated animal cruelty, and that's a Class E felony too.
What if an animal needs vet care, but it's not taken to the vets?
If you could show that, that's not one of the specified ways in the statute. That in and of itself, I don't think would constitute animal cruelty. But it's the main, like I said, not feeding water and shelter, or physically, intentionally harming the animal or hurting the animal. So, to you or I, not taking a dog to the vet would be neglect.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It would be neglect.
Yeah, but even in the human world, if parents don't take their kids, I've seen cases where a child was never taken to the doctor, until it started school, and then when they started school, they noticed the child should have gone for. Well, even in those cases, that's DCS may get involved, and the parents may have to do certain things, but it may not rise to the level of child abuse. But it's still considered a form of neglect, but it's not a crime, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is there it's okay, and we talked a little bit about hoarding and how hoarding can get so blown up really big quick. But when it comes to laws, is there a certain number that says after I have 10 dogs, I'm hoarding, or is it that?
No, it's really what it really amounts to is, do you have so many animals that it's causing you to commit one of those types of cruelty, by not being able to take care of them or give them adequate shelter.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no statute that says a person can only own X number of dogs or cats.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Ginger, you got anything you want to add to that or ask?
Well, yeah, some cities do have cities and counties, I think, do have some regulations on how many dogs and cats that you can own depending on where you live, whether it's in the city or the county, I think. I will
And
just add,
that's a little different than what I deal with are crimes. Okay?
Right,
And a crime, is, by definition, means you can go to jail for it. Now, yes, municipalities, cities, counties can enact their own ordinances against whatever, whatever, and
Okay.
but those won't carry a violation of that. Won't carry jail time. It'll carry some financial penalty or something like that.
What about abandonment? I think we've had people that just move off and
just
leave their
dog.
animal.
Right.
Yeah, it is. That is one of the subsections under under cruelty. It is a crime to intentionally abandon an animal, and you can do that by moving away and leaving it, or you can do it by most common way is people dropping. They go out to
the country, right.
to a country road and drop puppies or
Right.
whatever. That is covered under the statute.
Okay.
Also, tying an animal without shelter and food and water is considered cruelty in and of itself. So that's another
The
one.
animal can be tied as long as it has shelter, water, and food.
It's
right?
not illegal to tie an animal or a dog, but it has to have shelter, food, and water.
Food and water. And I know that the shelter law was something new that passed in the state legislature last year, I believe.
It is, and it really narrows the definition of shelter down. It makes it a lot more clear cut what adequate shelter is. In other words, a piece of tin leaning against a tree would no longer be
Shelter.
adequate shelter. And I forget what all it says in the statute, but it's pretty specific about how the shelter has to be made so that they have a way they're off the ground and they're out of the elements and things like that.
The hole going into the shelter has to be big enough for the dog to get through, but not so big to let all the wind
Right.
and the rain and all that in.
Yeah.
It has to have a roof and
Three sides.
Well, 4 sides.
Actually,
really, and
4
then one
sides, and
has-
then just the door to get in. Okay.
And we,
Yeah.
Okay.
we had some dog houses made back in the winter from the Summertown High School, and I gave them all the dimensions and everything of how it was supposed to be, because it wouldn't be good if the animal shelter
Well,
didn't have adequate housing for the dogs. So.
right. Well, when I read that, I was really surprised when I read that statute that it was that detailed and everything. It just told me that the animal lobby in Tennessee is pretty strong, to get that there.
So what? Let's say the animal control officer, whether for the city or the county, they go out and they cite somebody for their dog running at large. Now, most of those, I think, they do have to go to court, do they not?
Yes, it is. It's a criminal statute, and actually, we deal with animals at large or dogs at large cases probably as often as we do cruelty cases, if they're not more common.
Yeah,
we have lots of those.
We get those calls a lot, and I just tell them to call dispatch, and then dispatch will send them to whichever ACO it needs to go to. On that,
I'm sorry. Don't mean to cut you
Oh, no,
off.
that's not-
While I'm
that's
thinking, if I don't say it, I'll forget it. But there's a myth that the leash law, that's what everybody calls it. There's a myth that leash laws only apply in cities, or in cities over a certain size. That's not true. It's a statewide statute. It doesn't matter if you live on 100 acres, in New Prospect or downtown Memphis. You have to keep your dog on your property.
and it's not just dogs; it's chickens too. I mean, if you have chickens running at large, and cows and pigs and sheep and all those things.
There's a little distinction between the livestock animals and what they call companion. And
Okay.
under the law, they call the distinctions between companion animals and livestock. But yes, you do have to keep livestock, chickens, goats, whatever.
I
Keep
think
them
that-
up too.
I think the county ACO probably gets as many calls for livestock running at large
Oh yeah.
than dogs, because I swear every time I call him about something, I'm chasing a pig down,
Oh, yeah.
you know, St. Joe. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Glad I'm not the ACO, because I don't know if I want to, I'm not going after big cows and pigs. I'll stick with the dogs. I'll deal with dogs. But the livestock, I'm not.
Yeah. And isn't it great we have ACOs now?
It
We
is.
didn't have them.
I know, we did not up
For a long
until
time.
June and July of last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So
So.
I think that's made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
I don't get that many phone calls anymore about dogs running at large. I know for the message, our outgoing message at the shelter has that dispatch number on it. And I don't know what that is off the top of my head. So a lot of times people will hear that and you click, they just hang up.
Yeah.
But a lot of those calls are going through the dispatch. So, and then they can handle those how it needs to be handled. Like, is this your dog or is it your neighbor's dog, or, oh, this dog came up to your house a month ago. Well, now it's your dog.
Yeah.
You've been feeding it for a month. It's your dog. But, so it is really nice to have the ACOs
Yeah. I know.
in for the city and the county.
We've had them in Murray County, I guess, as long as I've worked there, and then we didn't have them down here, and it's I always, when I'd be down here and I'd get those calls, or I'd have that officer call me, and I always thought, man, we've got to get those down there. So I'm glad we got them.
It's helped, but the shelter is overwhelmed because they're sometimes they do have to pick up those dogs that were running at large. And now we have the ACOs that can also go out and determine whether or not it's going to be a cruelty case, or it's somebody just wasn't home for a little bit, their dog dumped their water over, can we fix that?
We do have so many people in the county that do love animals, and we're so thankful. But sometimes, they get excited and they think a dog is lost or it's a stray, and it's really not.
Yeah.
It's really just running at large, and just give it a little bit, and it's going to go home.
Yeah.
So we're trying to encourage people to ask more questions and try to find out, and the ACOs as well, to try to find out where the dog belongs, because the shelter is full.
Yeah.
And we will, what would you say we transported out in the last quarter? Did you say 40? And it never fails that we'll have a cruelty case or a hoarding case. And it's like they come rushing right back in
Then you just,
and fill it right back up
It's
again.
kind of like, somebody, oh, look.
Yeah.
There are 3 dogs down.
Yeah.
They adopted out 3 dogs. Well,
better-
6 will come in.
Oh yeah.
We did identify that there are people that are struggling to feed themselves, maybe buy their meds, and take care of their animals, because they have taken in strays, and they're going to take care of those animals.
Yeah.
So we started a kibble cupboard that people have donated food to, and Ginger makes sure the ACOs have this food, so that if they see a situation, they can help out, because we are trying to keep dogs out of the shelter. And keep them in the home if we can.
And if anybody out there knows somebody who, is struggling feeding themselves and they have a dog, call the shelter, call 931-244-0265, and we will make sure that they have food for their animals.
Absolutely. And we'll even feed the kitty cats too if there's a situation out there like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
So
going to be
what
hard for me not to call you next time I go to Tractor Supply for my poor dogs.
We've had a lot of adoption events at Tractor Supply. They're so good to us.
Yeah.
And these people come out with those rolling carts, and it'll just be mounted up, and we're like, okay, don't ask them. They've got plenty of dogs.
We don't want to know. So on the running at large, when the ACO, cites somebody for that, can they also cite them for not having a rabies? vaccine?
Uh,
A rabies license? I guess it's not really a license, but yeah, it is.
well,
Certificate, I guess.
I'm not sure if that's part of the. I mean,
Because it is this, it's a state law that
yeah,
everybody.
it is, but I don't know that it's not a criminal statute like running at
Okay.
large. So, they could. They may could cite them for it, but there's nothing we could do in court as far as. Well, I say that. I mean, if they wanted to, we could make that part of whatever we did in court.
Okay.
Make sure they got the rabies and all the vaccinated.
That would be great.
That's one of the that's sometimes it's the conditions we impose on these cases is to make sure they're, and especially we always do it if a dog is running at large and bites someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we pretty much right out of the gate we're gonna make that owner bring in proof of vaccinations
Right.
and all those things.
We were talking earlier about people not taking their children and getting, medical care for them, and probably not their vaccines either. So that's just one thing. I think if people who live in Lawrence County would just get their dogs their rabies tag, and then put the rabies tag on a collar. If your dog is lost, then I can track you down by that by the number on that tag and get you your dog back home. That's the thing with us. I mean, dogs will come in, they're in great shape, they've got a beautiful collar on, it could be new many times, and there's not a tag anywhere. There's no phone number, there's nothing on there, just so that we can get your dog back to you if there's nothing on
So
there.
we depend on Facebook then, don't we?
Exactly,
Yeah.
we sure do. I'll tell you, I was sitting in church one Sunday morning. My niece is calling me, and I'm like, I'm in church, and she goes, your dog's out. I'm like, I don't know exactly what happened, but somehow the gate was open and she was outside, and she's not usually ever outside when I'm not home. But it was like a neighborhood deal. They're like, oh, wait, this guy over here says, oh, no, he knows, your niece's husband Clay down the street, and well, he knows so-and-so. So the dog wound up back in my house by the time I got out of church. But boy, I sure had to talk with her. But she did have her rabies tag, and she had her name tag on it that has my number on there, and then I think it also has a family member's number on there just in case. So she could have wound up at home one
And
way or the other. But
I see on Facebook so many times too, oh, my dog ran out. My kid opened the door and my dog ran out. It's a house dog.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, it's out here having a ball, but no collar, no tag, no microchip, no nothing.
Yeah.
That can happen. So,
well, and it can happen.
It can happen to
If it happened to me, I probably shouldn't have admitted that. But anyway, it did.
well,
It
talk
can
about
happen.
the evidence that you need to prosecute a case.
Okay. With as with any case, the burden of proof in these cases is just as high as it is in a murder case. It's the same burden, beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's usually no problem proving that the dogs were at large cases. It's going to be easy to prove the dog was out, running around, wasn't on its property. Where you're going to run into problems is proving that the intent of the owner, especially in cruelty cases, in those neglect cases, is because we have to prove, that they intentionally or knowingly committed one of those acts of not providing shelter or something like that. And so it's important to that some of the best evidence of that are prior situations. If it rarely do we see, by the time we end up with a case in court, especially on dogs at large, rarely do neighbors call us or call the police. We end up court the first time a dog's been gotten out. It's the neighbors that are tired of seeing the same dogs, So when what I ask people to do, or what I tell people to do is, when we get those calls, is I tell them, even if you're not going to call the police, document it. That you saw that animal out. Take a picture of it with your phone. If you see it walking down the street in front of your house, and maybe it was a one-time thing, and the dog. This will be the last time you'll see that dog out. But if it turns into a problem down the road, then you've got that. You have that evidence of those prior occasions, because the most common defense in those cases is, it was just a one-time thing. There was a hole in the fence we didn't know about, or the dog ran out. We didn't know. Well, the neighbors are telling me this isn't the first time we've seen this dog. This dog's out all the time, but they don't have any documentation or proof of it.
So if they documented that, and let's say they had documented that over the last 3 months, you would bring them into court and they would testify, supposedly?
Yeah.
If they're really that upset?
Yeah, if that's, and we rely on those. And when, a lot of times, if you call the police, if you see an animal it's either being abused or that's roaming or at large, and that the owner ends up charged, and you're going to at least be part of our proof that we have in court. So we're going to ask you to testify about what you saw and heard, and whether you had conversations with the owner, previously. And like I said, most of the time, it's rare that we're going to have people in court that this is the first time it's happened. Because, generally people try to get along with each other. And
especially neighbors, you want to get along, right?
It's the neighbors that are fed up are typically the ones that we have in court. And they usually don't mind testifying because they are fed up with it and they want something done about it. And if the way to get that done is by them sitting there and telling the judge, what they saw and heard and all those things, then they're okay with doing that.
If it appears to be an abuse neglect case, and the dog is starving and it's not been fed and there's no shelter and whatever, and a neighbor reports that, do you bring the neighbor in on those type cases?
In those type cases, a lot of times you can get by with just using the officer or the animal control officer
that goes out and picks
that goes out, and in our case, we'll start off with that officer testifying. I received a call from dispatch of a dog at such and such address that had been abused, and I went to that address and saw X, Y, and Z. So sometimes we'll need the person that called them in, sometimes we don't. It just kind of depends. The vast majority of these cases we work out in court by some kind of plea bargain or some kind of agreement. So when we do that, nobody has to testify because we don't have to prove our case, so to speak. It's the contested cases where the owner says, "I'm not guilty,"
or "It's not my dog."
It's not my dog, And that's when and that's we get that a lot too. That's not my dog. So having that neighbor says, "Yes, it's their dog. I've talked to them about their dog before," and things like that. That's the kind of proof we need.
So if I surrender my dog, that the case is not over. The dog's abused, okay? It's neglected, or it appears to be. I guess that's what I'm supposed to say. And I've agreed to surrender the dog. But the case is not over, right? I'm still guilty of abusing or neglect or...
Well, it depends. If the case is still pending, then you're not guilty of anything.
Yet, okay.
But now if you pled guilty or entered into an agreement on something that maybe doesn't involve a plea, or you're tried and convicted by a jury, then and the surrender is a condition of one of those, then the case is over, and Yeah, in a case, I guess there are cases where people go ahead and surrender the animal while the case is still pending.
That's how we have Ziggy
Yeah.
back.
And in that situation, it's just, that person just agrees to go ahead and surrender the animal. They're not being forced to by the court. Now, the court, hopefully they got an order signed by the court saying that, that they surrendered, that they are surrendering the dog. Or they signed some. Surely there should be documentation somewhere that they surrendered the dog. So they're saying, I'm never going to ask for this dog to come back home.
And I think I mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So I think the advantage to the owner of the dog is that the shelter gets restitution. And so we charge so much per day per animal.
Right.
And so once they surrender the dog to us, they don't have to pay any more restitution after that date.
Okay.
And then that also lets us go ahead and put dogs like Ziggy up for adoption. Otherwise, we had a case from last February that just went on and on and on. And the woman just didn't feel like she could surrender them for whatever reason. She wasn't going to get them back. And I think it wound up being like close to Christmas before she actually surrendered them. So we had some of those dogs were puppies when we got them. So now they're almost a year old. Yeah. It makes it difficult to adopt them out. Plus, with as many dogs as we have, I'm not going to say to make it difficult to care for them. It's difficult to love them.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I like to do at the shelter is we want to make sure that they're not just fed and I'm gonna say clothed, but they're not just given food and water and shelter, but they're played with and they're loved and they know that, and they feel safe with us. But sometimes when you have that many, it's not. Sure. We can't do that. And so to get them to surrender the dog almost right up front, I guess when they I don't know how it all works, maybe when they have their first hearing, it's better for the dog and for us if they do that. It's better for them too, because then they don't have all those fees to pay. Sure. But and it's not like they're paying the whole thing anyway. But right. And I'll take what we can get, but I would prefer just to have the dog. Yeah,
and it's also to their benefit. When they do get to the point in the case where they're either being sentenced by the judge or they're working out a plea bargain, it's something they can say in their favor. They can say, or the defense attorney, their attorney can come up and say, look, they surrendered the dog, they're not going to ask for it back. And, and that's just kind of a check mark that goes in their column of showing,
maybe it's their first offense,
showing their willingness to cooperate. And, they're not trying to be difficult, I guess.
And sometimes it's really, the other day we had somebody surrender, and 2 days later somebody came in and adopted the dog, and the dog has moved to Ohio and is living his best life now.
That's a great story.
So it's just, first off, feed your dogs and give your dogs, the basic things in life. But if for some reason you can't and you wind up having to court over it, just surrender your dog. I mean, I want the dog.
Right.
Yeah, and I've had cases where it's typically hoarding cases where they just have so many, or the puppy mill cases where owning those animals is like an addiction.
Right.
And we put people in jail for violating their probation because, they plead guilty, they surrender all their animals. It's a condition of their probation that they not own any more animals. And then a month later, you get a call that they have animals. So, you send the probation officer or whoever out there looking, sure enough, they're starting right back over again. And knowing that they have a year, up to a year in jail hanging over their head, and they know that a condition of staying out of jail is not owning animals, and they can't keep from doing it, or they won't stop doing it. And those are the really kind of cases that worry you.
Yeah, because it's a mental problem at that point. It's not just I love animals.
Yeah.
There's some type of something going on.
Yeah, and,
Something going on.
and mental illness does tie into this in some cases. You know, where you have people that are just mentally ill, and you know, we have people that commit crimes because they're not taking their medication for their bipolar, you know, or whatever. And they get off their medication, and that's when they start acting out, and that's when they end up in jail. It's the same way, you know, when they're pet owners. You know, when they start, when they get off the medication, they're not taking care of themselves. The animals suffer too. You know,
Yeah.
so.
I can't imagine. Well, you know, if somebody winds up going to jail and they have animals, that animal is at home. I mean, how does that? You know, I guess it was maybe a month ago or something. I saw something like, oh, that guy's going to jail. He has a dog. Her name is blah 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 blah. So I'm calling. You know, I'm calling the sheriff. I'm like, hey, who has this guy's dog?
Yeah.
And apparently, like, the wife or ex-wife had the dog. But they're like, you're worried about the dog? I'm like, yeah, I'm worried about the dog because the dog's
we
going to be
are.
home alone, you know?
Right.
The dog
Right.
doesn't know that, you know.
Right.
dad's-
One of our homeless,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's the proper word anymore, but I think they were going to spend some time in jail, and they had a dog, and we were trying to help find a foster.
Yeah.
He loved that dog.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
loved that dog. Well, who encourages the person to surrender? Is it the judge?
Well, it
Or the
can be.
attorney?
Well, it can be actually. The animal control officer can talk to them. When they're out there writing that citation, they could tell them, look, we're going to be taking these dogs, and you're going to be paying. You're going to be responsible for repaying the shelter for feeding and caring for your animal. And it's going to be this, so much a day if they know that. And one way to avoid that is by surrendering the dog. But
Okay.
I would assume most of the time, those cases, that conversation probably happens in court,
Okay.
where the DA and defense attorney are talking, and the subject of restitution comes up, and one way to limit that would be to go ahead and surrender the animal. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I know I get emails from your office saying, hey, what is,
yeah,
what's going on with this particular dog? And then I'll give them the rundown of whatever medical bills, and then, cost of care per day, taking care of it, food and water, all that stuff. So,
Okay.
yeah, and if it's a case where one of those bad cases where I know as a prosecutor we're gonna, whatever the result of this case is, the main thing is we don't want this person to ever own animals again, or at least not for the next couple of years, and we probably start talking surrender pretty early.
yeah. I know the one person I was talking about earlier, when I added it all up, it was like $68,000.
Yeah.
We'll never get $68,000,
No.
but
Right.
I think I said, okay, if I can get 10% of that, I'll,
That'd be a win.
that'd be a win. Yeah.
Do you have many cases that go all the way to a jury trial?
I'm trying to think of the last animal case we had that went to a jury trial. We don't have many. Like I said, probably out of all criminal cases, I'd say 95% of them probably settle in some kind of
Okay.
plea bargain or agreement. Animal cases are the same way. I can't think offhand of the last time we've had one in front of a jury, and I'm sure as soon as I walk out of here, it'll hit
Well,
me.
that-
But yeah, most of them are resolved through some kind of agreement.
Do you feel like the laws in Tennessee are strong enough, or would you like to see changes there? Or
If you had asked me that a few years ago, I would have said no. But now that we have aggravated animal cruelty, now that the law provides for the animals being removed and them being banned from owning animals, I think, I'm sure well, I know there are cases we have where, where we're thinking, man, if we only had a bigger state, these people deserve more than we
Yeah.
can give them. But I think overall they're pretty good. I think the legislature lately's done a good job of increasing those penalties.
Well, that's good to hear.
Because like I said, I think they all need to be under the jail.
I think y'all have a good lobby up there, apparently.
Well, we're going to have to bring you back because we're out of time.
That's
So
unbelievable.
join us again next week.
Wow, that went fast.